science.
How much do you apply like the science and the research that you gain towards like your actual training? Because I feel like a lot of people, they overthink their training, right? So like how much do you apply that to your actual training?
So there's two ways I could answer this, right? I'm not in the gym pulling up PubMed. Like, what was the results of this last study? I need to know before I do the press downs.
Yeah.
But like, I think what science is mostly, so people think science overcomplicates things, but it should actually simplify things because it helps us understand what doesn't work. So we can just eliminate that from our training, right? So in that sense, I use it basically every workout. But in terms of like what has science done to inform me on my day-to-day training, quite a lot, because one of the most important things that it's told us is that you have to train pretty close to failure. You have to train hard to build muscle, right? Now, if you weren't savvy to that science, you might actually go in and just be like, oh, just get a pump, man. Bodybuilders used to do that all the time, just chase the pump. Which isn't necessarily a bad idea, but it's not maximizing tension. You have to grind some reps out.
Yeah.
And that's not always correlated with the best pump.
Yeah.
So that would just be one example of something. Another thing is like, I'm thinking about the application of tension on different exercises. So like if I'm going to do a lateral raise, like I'm going to favor the cable if it's there, because you get continuous tension throughout the movement. Whereas with a dumbbell, you have no tension at the bottom, peak tension at the top. Like I will legitimately apply those things in my own training all the time.
Yeah.
But you can absolutely over science it to the point where it's like, you're basing your philosophy off of like one study that found one thing.
Yeah.
Like let's not go that deep into it. It's interesting to consider, but you want to look at the general principles. So again, train very hard, use a variety of different exercises. That's actually something that I think powerlifters probably would be missing out on. Like if all you do is squat, bench, and dead, there are going to be muscles that go underdeveloped.
Yep.
And even in the muscles that do get developed, it probably won't be the most even symmetrical growth across all heads. You do want to have some variety in your training. In terms of frequency, 1 to 2 times a week at least you want to be hitting each muscle. Doesn't seem to be a huge difference with that anymore. And then progressive overload, like you want to ensure that you're doing something more, whether that's you're controlling the weight better, you're adding a rep, you're adding some weight, slower negative, like better technique improvement. There's all kinds of
different ways to switch up to make it like that progress. Yeah.
And those are like the main things that should form like the basis of your training.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to day to day, there's a lot of self-experimentation in my own training. Like what exercise do I feel better? What feels better on my joints? What, I don't know, what seems like fun for this workout. You know, there's little things that I do like that. And then just, be my own scientist in a way and figure out like, okay, I really like this new variation. I got really sore when I did this. Therefore, that's probably a new stimulus for me. I'll keep that in for another couple months and try to progress on that one. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, you said that you have to train hard, right? Yeah. Like pretty much going towards failure. Yeah. Do you think, because me personally, like this is an observation I made in the gym Saturday. Because I'm like a people watcher inside the gym. Yeah. I've noticed that a lot of people do not like focus up when they go work out. Like they're casually working out.
Yeah.
How do you, number one, like how do you approach your training almost to failure mindset every time you go inside the gym? And then also, what percentage of people do you think do that on a daily basis? Because a lot of people complain about not being able to grow or make progress. And I'm like, chances are, like, I think people overcomplicate progression. Like if you train well and you train how you're supposed to train and you eat how you're supposed to eat, it's most likely it's going to happen, right? Progression. But I just feel like people miss the element of actually pushing themselves inside of the gym.
So I agree with you in some context on that. It will happen, but with other people, I think they need more accountability. I think for you, you're so intrinsically motivated that like, I just know the way that you train, you can get away with that. But I think some people might need a little more accountability than that. And like a training log where they track and this kind of thing would actually be valuable for that type of person. But So as for how hard do people train, there's actually research on this, and where they take people and they say, okay, pick a weight that you'd normally do for 10 reps. Okay. So let's say for you, that's like 225 or so. Maybe it wouldn't be for you. For me, it might be 225. Okay. And so the researchers load up 225 on the bar and they say, okay, now you normally do this for 10 reps, right? Okay. Do it for as many reps as you can. Let's see how hard you've been training with this 225. And I forget the exact numbers, but it's something like half of people had like 6 or 7. They got like 16 or 17 reps with their normal 10 rep weight. There was like 20% of people that got more than 20 reps. So they were leaving like more than 10 reps in the tank, RPE 0 or negative RPE. So like it shows that, when people are left to their own devices, they do tend to undertrain. I do think that from a hypertrophy standpoint. Now listen, anything you do is better than nothing. Like from a health and longevity standpoint, mental health benefits, strength benefits, you're going to reap all of those, even if you're training far from failure. If you're trying to maximize your muscular potential, it just will not get it done. And the fastest way to start getting it done is to just get closer to that point of failure. Now for me, I typically will leave maybe 1 or 2 reps in the tank for my first couple sets for an exercise. And then the last one, I pretty much just always send it. And so I just get to the point where I just can't get the rep up. Or, and my audience calls me out on this sometimes, I just stop when I know I couldn't have got another rep because it would just be purely theatrics for me to fake trying to get it. It's like, I know I can't do it. I've been doing this for 15 years. Okay. I don't have another one. I'm 100% sure. And I've done failure training for so long that I know exactly what it feels like. You know, sometimes I surprise myself. Like if it's a new exercise, sometimes I'll be like, okay, I'd probably normally stop there. Let me just send it, see what happens. And I'll get another rep or 2. But I'm usually pretty accurate with when I've hit it.
I know that, like, granted, it was like at the beginning of my lifting career. Do you remember CT Fletcher? Yeah. I mean, he was definitely like the antithesis of like science and shit. But he was definitely on with like that overtraining shit, like just like going until failure type stuff. I experienced so much muscle growth. Granted, I know it's me and it's like a little bit different, but like,
for sure.
I grew so much doing his training for like a year, and I had to like switch out all my clothes. For sure. And I'm a big proponent of like training till like I do a structural failure. So if you can't get clean reps, you should probably chill a little bit. Because you're going to open yourself more to injury depending on what the movements 100%. That you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with that. You standardize the technique and then reach the point where you can't get another rep with the same technique. I give a little bit of wiggle room with that because, you know, even let's say on a dumbbell row, for example, like if I be like extremely upright and I'm pulling with like the perfect form and the 1-2 negative and the perfect form, like I'll probably hit failure pretty early, but if I just did a little bit of a swing, I might get another 7 or 8 reps. I think it's worth it to get that extra.
Did you make a video about that recently?
Yeah, actually.
Okay, I think I watched it. It was like you broke down like being able to like do more like adding more momentum. It's like you would have benefited a little bit more because you're able to get partial reps in versus not even doing it in general.
Yeah, exactly. And so another thing that's been really accumulating a lot of support in the research as a whole is the value of the stretched aspect of a lift. That seems to be far more hypertrophic. So think about that with basically any muscle, like bodybuilders who used to do partial reps. They used to do them for the most part in the stretched part. It would be the bottom part of the squat, right? They wouldn't get to full lockout, but they would get down in the hole and just kind of pulse in the bottom. Right. That's actually probably really good, honestly. Really? Yeah. Because the stretch part of the lift is the most hypertrophic part. So if you're doing RDLs, like you don't need to get the full squeeze at the top. Like the squeeze is not as important as the stretch is.
You see a lot of bodybuilders like, cause I'll be looking at, I'm like, this motherfucker not even finishing the goddamn, he's just
but
like
that's
that.
The thing. If you're doing dips, like stay in the bottom
in the stretch part
of the lift. Now you don't, listen, it's not going to be a night or day difference. But I don't know. I think that that's something that people could apply for sure.